Welcome to the Energy Insights Perspective series from Delta EE. Energy Insights, the consumption data and interface for residential energy customers to access and benefit from, lies at the heart of many customer engagement and digital transformation strategies. And at Delta EE, we have a research service dedicated to this topic. This series of Energy Insights Perspectives narrows down on one topic within this market. Today, we'll be discussing customer engagement through the customer interface and customer experience. We bring in an energy industry expert to debate the topic, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Håkan Ludvigson, CEO of Eliq, whose company has some of the most customer-centric solutions around. Welcome, Håkan. Do you want to say hello and introduce yourself?
Thank you, David. Håkan Ludvigson, one of the founders of Eliq. We're a software company based in Sweden and the UK, and we help utilities engage their customers with typically white label mobile apps and underlying energy insights that we deliver through an API as well. So very happy to be talking about this. It's a subject that's very close to our hearts at Eliq.
Great, thanks. So energy insights services for the residential consumer are developing all the time. They're increasing in functionality and sophistication, from sort of different granularities of data to different techniques in displaying it, such as comparisons or disaggregation and projections and advice. Also, the channels vary, from smartphones to web portals, energy monitors, or push notifications, such as in-app or via SMS or email. And in future, they'll be even more advanced, empowering customers to make positive, personalized choices in real time to manage a greater, more connected home energy ecosystem. But whilst the advances are welcome, they've generally been fairly tech-driven, effectively built by engineers for engineers. And many offer a bewildering array of data and charts. They often lack the simplicity and ease of use, essentially the intuitiveness to convince the less digital and data savvy to engage in large numbers. Our research shows that the user base of energy insight services is currently dominated by the energy engaged and sort of prosumer audience groups, yet there's really strong appeal amongst a much broader audience. And we believe that energy companies need to engage with different types of consumers who may be at different stages and mindsets on the energy transition, and engage with them in different ways. Some companies have different products aimed at different audience groups. The prepay versus credit customers, for instance, is an obvious one, but some products have specific uses for prosumers. There are premium models for the most engaged, or sometimes variations on the product, for instance, for the blind or visually impaired. Other companies build in sort of layers of detail, so there's something there for everyone. But either approach can add complexity, time, and therefore cost to product development. So Håkan, I'll turn to you. In terms of customer engagement, how is the industry thinking about this concept of different approaches for different audiences to engage this broader audience base, or are they sticking to a one size fits all? What are the conclusions they're coming to?
Yeah, it's a very interesting one. I think sort of in the product space for utilities, I think this is a particularly tough challenge, because like if you look at many other industries, you'll find each company is sort of targeting a niche or a segment or a number of segments within the overall sort of market. Whereas for utilities, typically or traditionally, especially, they're just they're a service for everyone. So you kind of have to be able to speak to a really broad range of different kinds of people. Whereas some will be so as you said, like really engaged, really interested in technology and so on. Whereas on the other side of the scale, the people who are, who wouldn't be able to tell you, who they're buying their energy from, and that's actually a very large portion of the overall customer base. So I think the sort of what's going on in the industry right now, I think utilities are sort of they're coming from a place where they don't really know much about their customers to actually now learning more about their customers, especially these new energy retailers that are maybe acquiring customers through different channels. They're using new CRM systems that where they can actually store some detail about who these customers are. But traditionally, you wouldn't have known much more than, you know, how much energy do they use and what's the meter point number, more or less. Yeah, I think that's sort of where we are. I think the interesting bit that's happening on bigger utilities is where we're seeing more sort of broadening of the range of different propositions. So you have now many of the bigger suppliers will have different propositions, tariffs, maybe smart tariffs, EV tariffs, different bundling options with EV or PV solutions. So that's definitely happening, definitely addressing a really small portion of the user base in the majority of these cases, but that will probably grow. Now, so sort of back to what is that we're doing and how these utilities are actually speaking to their customers in different ways. I think the main bits are on like just the fact that we now have the availability of so much more data from smart meters, the ability to like learn from a user in a digital product, like for example the white label mobile apps that we provide. They're really facilitating a two-way conversation where the product is learning about the user, their behavior, they're enabling the customer to add some more personal details to get more like better recommendations, better advice. So that's really changing the dynamics there, I think. So it's more sort of, I think, catching up with other industries in that regard.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, so more detail, sort of more data and more interaction. You're creating a greater knowledge of those consumers and being able to therefore treat them in perhaps different ways. So there are probably sort of two main levers to consider that are visible to the end user. You've got the content of the energy insights, effectively the data and what you do with that, and the channels of communications, such as the apps, web portals, and SMS messaging. So if we take one in turn, so we take the channels of communication first. What's the appropriate balance of sort of customer pull and being reliant on a certain level of engagement from that customer base, or the balance between that and sort of push techniques to environments that a broader range of customers already use, familiar with, and hopefully pick up on the energy insights part of that?
Yeah, I mean, this is a great question. There's no, so in my view, there's no single answer or single solution to everything. So it's kind of, if you think about in real life, if you probably wouldn't want to be stopped in the street to know that you could buy, buy a new or get a new electricity plant, for example. Whereas if somebody knew that your house was on fire, you would probably want to know that right away, right? So I think traditionally what's been used in the industry, and particularly in North America, is the approach of like the concept of home energy reports. So it's been around for around 10 years. I think they started more sort of paper-based and are now more email-based reports, where you sort of once a month or once a billing cycle, whatever, you send the customer a report telling them, this is how you're using energy. This is what you could do differently. That's a very much like a good example of a push approach that is very widely used and sort of been built on the back of state energy efficiency subsidiaries in the US. And the problem with that is like it's very far from that sort of natural conversation with somebody where, like, if you want to find out more, if you want to, well, actually these numbers don't really match my house because my house is different for whatever reason. So actually the beauty of say an interactive interface like a mobile app or it could be something else is that you can actually you can give the customers like something simple, something basic at first, and then they can if they're the kind of people that would want to know more about it, they can fill out more details. They can get a more, like, instantly get a more personal analysis, or more, more things they could do to reduce their consumption, or similar. So I think that's a sort of a mobile app sort of fits in between the sort of, it has both push and pull elements. It can help people to solve problems that they need solving. So where they can pick up the phone to check, okay, has my bill been paid, or what is my next bill going to be? To solve problems that they would like to pull. Well, they would like to use a pull approach, and then they can get a push notification when there's a power cut, or you left something on at home. So I think it's and this is why many other industries have sort of well, mobile apps is where we talk to a lot of the companies that we do business with, right? So yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, I certainly see the benefit of apps, and they're widespread. In fact, they're the most sort of common platform for energy insights used across Europe for most countries, not all of them. In the UK, for instance, we find the Energy Monitor is the most used device, but for most, it definitely is the app. That makes sense. And a lot of companies, particularly the bigger ones, are embedding some of that energy insights functionality into a broader offering for a customer app. As you mentioned, things like the lumping in with the account management and other sort of products and services they offer. So it's there, it's visible to perhaps the less engaged, and over time they'll start sort of delving into that element of the app and the functionality, and bringing them on that journey. So yeah, so interesting in terms of the channels and what they can do, the pros and cons of those different channels. So if we turn our attention to the actual content of energy insights, the data, in an ideal world, consumers might wish to access the depth of insight that's appropriate for them. And of course, that might be slightly different to somebody else. So if you take the analogy of an online news story, some may be satisfied just by sort of scanning the headlines and the images. Some might be drawn to certain articles. The first paragraph might summarize the whole article in a very short paragraph. But the story unfolds and there's more detail if you wish to move on. Additionally, of course, there are links for further context and additional layers of insight for the really engaged. So how useful is it to consider this analogy of effectively layering different levels of data and insight? And what techniques do you see being adopted that will create a greater customer experience for both the energy engaged and the mainstream audience together?
Yeah, that's another very good question. I think sort of in sort of with my product hat on, I would probably say, it would be amazing if we could have a product that would just adapt to each customer and have like a different UI depending on how they respond to it. But actually, in reality, that's very, very difficult to do, because it's going to raise questions like, why does my app not have the same features that my I don't know, my friend's app, for whatever reason? And it kind of just opens a whole can of worms on people trying to understand how these products actually work, which is, it's another thing you need to show customers how it's working and that it's working. So it's quite tricky. But I think sort of what companies like Google and Apple and others have taught us is that there's actually, for the most part, in many cases, that you'll be able to like build a single product that can really address the needs of both the users on the high end or high engagement, let's say, of the spectrum, and on the low end. Now, when it comes to utilities, so I would still kind of see that sort of the 3 to 5% of the audience that are really, really interested in energy, that are, they're buying solar panels, they're buying, they were the first to get their electric cars, and I'm not sure that they would necessarily be, I'm not sure that the utilities would be able to satisfy all of their needs in terms of energy insights, in terms of like analytics, and maybe they want to track the individual cells of their solar panels and so on. So maybe they'll go somewhere else. So they'll get an add-on of something to get something more detailed. I could imagine that some point in the future. But I do think that your layering example is a quite good one. So sort of best practice is, you show you're really ruthless in picking out the top couple of things that are most important to you. Like these are the top highlights, that these are the standout metrics about your home, or the standout insights or actions. And then you layer other things in, and the most advanced sort of settings and the most advanced information, you'll tuck it in underneath a advanced or learn more sort of section. So and yeah, most people will open it once, but most people never look at it. So that's what I think what you'll find in most products. You'll find, like, if you go into Spotify settings, you'll see like a few settings that everybody can make, and then there's an advanced section where you can have like beat matching when you're listening to electronic music, so they overlap in sync. There's lots of advanced things that most people never look at. So yeah, that's probably the way I would describe it. So no, nothing really that I would say that makes energy stand out in that regard from other industries.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so clearly a lot to think about to attract both the broader audience as well as the current energy engaged, and probably energy companies probably need to consider, how those energy insights are displayed through sort of layering or data visualization, and how they're packaged together as a one-stop shop, or the different channels they can access, and the different sort of ways of communication through sort of push and pull techniques, and the combination of them. So a lot to think about. Thank you, Håkan, for sharing your experience and views. And to the audience, this is one of a series of episodes, so do look out for other episodes in the Energy Insights Perspectives series from Delta EE. Thank you for listening.